What's up, humans? So today we're talking about minimalism versus maximalism.
My name is Maximus.
Now, minimalism is trying to reduce your training in terms of complexity, in terms of variation, in terms of exercise selection, sometimes in terms of volume. You are trying to get more from less. You are always trying to cut things out of your program. On the other hand, maximalism is trying to get more from more. So more variety, more variations, more exercise selection, often more volume. You are trying to not necessarily overcomplicate, but just to do more. And either extreme can be dangerous.
We are same, but different. But still same.
I don't mean dangerous in a you'll snap your shit up kind of way. I mean dangerous in a this is probably not optimal kind of way. First, let's talk about exercise selection and variety in your training. I've posted clips of me leg pressing or hip thrusting or doing single leg work or doing a close grip bench press or doing an RDL. And often the comment is something like this: just squat, bro. Just bench, bro. Just deadlift, bro. So don't do any other variations. Don't tweak your form at all. Only do these three movements. And if you think about it, powerlifting is kind of a minimalistic sport. You're only training 3 movements in competition. And Olympic weightlifting is even more minimalistic. You're only training 2 movements, the snatch and the clean and jerk. However, if you look at almost all Olympic weightlifters and certainly almost all powerlifters, in training, they don't just do those movements. They add in some variety because there is value in doing more than just the specific work. The specific work gives you the most bang for your buck, but there is still value in variation. So a minimalistic training program might be something like the Bulgarian method, where it's ultra specific. I've seen training programs like 1 lift a day, where you're only doing 1 lift on a certain day, as you would expect based on the name. Something like starting strength, where you're just doing a handful of basic movements. And there isn't anything wrong with this, especially if you are a beginner. So if you're a beginner, you simply don't need that much variation. And I think a lot of beginners, they would be best served on a bare bones, fairly minimalistic style of training. Conversely, sometimes very advanced athletes will also benefit from extreme specificity, a minimalistic approach. You look at Naim Suleimanoglu, his training program was a very Bulgarian style of training. He was doing like snatch, clean and jerk, the competitive lifts, power snatches, power cleans and power jerks, front squat, and then back squat. So 6 lifts. And actually near the end of his training career, he actually just cut out back squats entirely. So he was doing just a few very, very specific movements. And obviously it was very, very effective at getting a peak performance. On the other hand, a minimalistic approach can absolutely leave you at risk for injury. If you look at a lot of people on the Bulgarian system, sure, some survived and did really well. If you survive, you often thrive. But a lot of people don't survive.
Coach, my knee really hurts. It looks all swollen.
That's why no one will remember your name.
And for your own training, you probably aren't willing to roll the dice. Because if you knew how many people got messed up on this kind of system, you probably wouldn't roll the dice in the first place. So if you're a beginner, minimalism can work because you're just not lifting that heavy of loads and you can actually adapt pretty well. But as you become an intermediate, you might want to add in more variety. And if you're advanced, you might want to add in even more variety at times and then be more specific before a competition. Now, maximalism also has benefits and problems. The benefits is that you are experimenting in your training and you're learning more. I've done thousands and thousands of different exercises in the gym. This makes me a better coach, and this has helped me find what works well for me. But I don't do every single variation that I've ever done. A lot of stuff I've just thrown in the garbage because that's where it belonged. So one of the benefits of maximalism is that you can find and separate what belongs in the garbage and what is actually worth keeping in your training. Without experimenting, you might not know, because it takes a lot of self-trial and error. This isn't something you can necessarily find online. On the other hand, this can absolutely be overdone. I see a lot of beginners, they just go into the gym and they grab a shake weight and they just do whatever curl they connect with that day, which is really just a stupid way of training. It is asinine. Let's just call it what it is. There is value in variation, but excessive variation is a good way to go nowhere. At a certain point, be real with yourself. You're just jacking off your dopamine receptors by trying to hit a new PR on a new exercise every single session. I would say if you're a beginner, a more minimalistic approach to exercise selection and variety is a good thing. As you become more intermediate, you start hitting plateaus, you start seeing less progression. That's where you can start to add in a little bit more variety, but don't go crazy. When you're more advanced, you should probably already know what works for you, and therefore having some variety at some times and less variety at other times, depending on the phase of your training, would be a good idea. Now let's talk about volume. Now, a lot of people do take a minimalistic approach to their volume. They think, one set, I get the most bang for my buck, and that's it. And this can work in some cases. However, it's probably not going to work as well as a little bit more volume. Yes, you are getting, a majority of your benefit from the fewer sets, the earlier sets that you do. But you're still getting value. You're getting those diminishing returns. However, a maximalist perspective is like, what can I do to get the most gains? Like, how much training can I survive? And this is also probably not ideal. If you can just survive 25 sets of an exercise per week, that doesn't necessarily mean you should do 25 sets per week. But you probably shouldn't do just one either. So it's going to be somewhere in the middle. And if you're a beginner, I would say start on the lower side of things. I see a lot of beginners doing way more volume than I really advocate. And often they aren't even focusing on progression. They're just adding in more and more and more volume because, of course, volume is the main driver of hypertrophy, right? Well, maybe no. Progression is the main driver of hypertrophy. Next, rep range. Now, if you take a minimalist perspective, you might do a 5 by 5. Sets of 4 are bad, sets of 6 are bad.
So why don't you shut your mouth and do your 5s?
Sets of 8, sets of 12, sets of 10, sets of 15, sets of 3. Only 5s are the way to go, because 5 by 5 is the most linguistically appealing rep and set scheme. And I'll see this in articles all the time. Sets of 1 to 5 are for strength, sets of 8 to 12 are for size, and sets of 15 to 20 are for endurance. Well, it's not that black and white. It's not that simple. It's not that minimalistic. It's a little bit more complicated, and it's more of a range. So you can gain size on sets of 3. You can gain endurance on sets of 5. You can gain strength on sets of 12. It's not efficient. It's not the most optimal, but it's still possible. Next, technique. Now, a minimalist approach to technique is that everyone must look the same when lifting, which I think we can all agree is asinine. A maximalist approach is that there's nothing in common, nothing is going to look the same at all, everyone is going to look radically different when they lift. Well, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. There are some things that pretty much everyone should follow in terms of exercise technique and your form and your cues and your visualizations, but it's probably going to be somewhere in the middle. So where should you be on this minimalist to maximalist scale? I don't know, but I'm going to help you find out. First, if you're a beginner, keep it simple, stupid. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't look up endless variations online. Don't click on the guy's videos who is like putting out a new curl every single week. That is extremely disingenuous. And most beginners need to not overcomplicate their training. They need to keep it as simple as possible. Just get on a very basic program and progress linearly.
Like heavy benches for sets of fat.
Nothing complicated at all. Once you're an intermediate, that's when things can become a little bit more complicated. You can add in a little bit more variety, perhaps some kind of periodization. Your goals might get a little bit more personal and individual and complicated as well. And so that is the way to go. If you're truly advanced, you don't need me to tell you what to do. You've already figured your shit out, otherwise you wouldn't be advanced. It also depends on your goals. If your goals are not very high, you can keep things very, very simple. But the more advanced and the more difficult your goals are going to be to attain, the more individualized and perhaps complicated your training plan will probably need to be. And you listen to some powerlifters and they're like, yeah, I have undulating, modulating periodizations and accessories, and then I count a 3.5 tempo on the way down, and then I keep the reps in the tank here, but then I push it here, and then 2 weeks out of the meet I cut my water, and you're just like, what the? Okay, like, I guess it's working, but for me, I don't want that complicated of stuff. For me, I keep things a lot simpler than that. Not super simple, but simple enough. Also, based on your personality. Some people, they like that kind of complicated stuff.
She's the one, Cole.
I get some client check-ins, and it's just page after page after page after page of them sort of just saying, oh, this is how I felt, and I felt like this was better, and then, you know, my technique was not good on this, and then, you know, maybe it'll be better if I remove a set here and add a set here, and I'm just like, all right, well, like, it's good you're thinking about this stuff, but don't overthink things. Other people, I'm like, how's the training going? They're just like, yeah, it's good. Like, that's all, and after they're like, so, a little more, right? Like, let's get a little bit more information rather than just good. There's also probably a physiology aspect as well as a psychological aspect. Some people do seem to thrive from more variety and just a more complicated style of training, and other people seem to really just do better on a very simple plan, regardless of their training age, psychology, and other stuff. So I would say ultimately, know thyself. Know where you are on this minimalistic to maximalistic scale, and know where you should be. Some people who have a minimalistic style of training, that's exactly what they need. Other people, they should be farther towards maximalism, and vice versa. So know where you are and know where you should be to get optimal results for you. Because there is value in both ways of thinking. And if you're on either side, at least understand the other perspective. That will probably be best in the long term. All right, that's all for this video. Like, subscribe, share, notifications, all that good shit. Now, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.